we are a mixture of several things. I would say our business as a whole, we have about 17 agents across the 4 locations. We're very strong in building systems and hiring talent and really following the systems. I mean, we've been immersed in Gary's MREA and One Thing books since the inception. I mean, I just know what successful people do. I'm not going to go out and recreate things. I'm just going to follow what others do. It's a heck of a lot simpler, right? So,
yeah. And while you're not recreating things, would you agree that there have been certain things in the last month and a half that have had to be recreated by circumstance?
Yeah, 1000%. And we're all going through that now. And what I find is those that are successful are the ones that don't get into their minds of, I'll just wait this out, right? Or, they get in their own way instead of just being like, hey, this is an opportunity. I see everything every challenge to me as an opportunity. And how do I overcome that challenge and make it something that's to my advantage?
Yeah. So, as one of the top agent coaches in MAPS, what are some of the things that you're seeing from agents across the country that they're struggling with, and how they're overcoming it?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Right here's the biggest one, right, that we typically see is mindset. And so Gary will talk a lot about that, and specifically around what are you feeding into your brain, right? As an example, what are you allowing yourself to be positive? Are you allowing yourself to focus on the news and a negative connotation, right? What are you feeding into your environment every day? And then I believe heavily into structure, right? Building your daily schedule. You hear it all the time. However, until sometimes we're really put under, the thumb or under pressure, we just kind of let the business run us a lot of times instead of us running the business. So I find agents now seem to have a little bit more time on their hands, if you will. So now to me, there's no excuse of like why you're not building a schedule. In the past, agents would try to use the excuse, I'm so busy, I can't build a schedule. Okay, tell me now why don't you build a schedule today, right? Is that fair, Scott?
Okay, so what are the things that you would choose to focus on during this time the most?
So for me, I think every place has an opportunity, again, as I mentioned earlier. And I think the opportunity is our business will change in some capacity moving forward. I believe you're going to see more virtual interactions with people. So the question I would have for you is, are you skilled and competent in using Zooms or Hangouts? Are you skilled and competent in doing a virtual buyer and listing presentation? Have you practiced those things with somebody, right? Find a partner and make sure that you know how to set up your Zoom and share your screen and those type of kind of more basic things. Yet don't practice it in front of your consumer, practice it with each other, right? And I'll do that with coaching clients and go like, hey, let's practice that, right? And go through the exercise. Do you know how to add backgrounds to your screen, right? Just simple things like that. Do you know how to mute yourself? Do you know how to troubleshoot if your client on the other end is having technical difficulties getting in? So that's kind of those things are what I see change. And then what I also see is more virtual. I believe, don't hold me to this, but I believe we're going to see more virtual open houses become the new norm. I mean, think about it. Okay. Why is a seller going to risk having buyers come into their house? It's already a risky adventure anyways, if you ask me, if I'm a seller with people coming in my house. I think virtual is going to be the way that new norm becomes. Would you agree?
I completely agree. And, if we were to look around in the room that we're sitting in right now, or in my case, sitting on a deck outside, there's conveniences that are around us, right? Every single one of us have amazing things that make our lives so much more convenient. And why do we have those things? Because at some point in time, there was a problem and somebody needed a solution. And so right now we're in a problem and we're actively working for a solution. And if we go back to the last time we had a market shift, which was back in 2008, 2009, there wasn't a book. There was no shift book. And they wrote it as they were going along and going through the process. And that led us to today having a playbook. Now, is that playbook exactly the play for this particular thing? For the most part, yes. And there are certain things that have changed since 2008, 2009, 2010. And yet, if we look at it, we've got to constantly be reevaluating what we're doing every single day and think, okay, is this going to be a standard practice going forward because of the circumstance that has been dictated right now? And we've got to constantly be interrogating that reality.
Agreed. And one thing that we're seeing too, and we're encouraging folks to do, is a lot of people had some of their biggest successful first quarters ever, right?
Yeah.
Some of you that have had a lot of production probably saw massive numbers in Q1. The reality of it is, when you set your GPS up, if you did it right, you probably set it up in September, October, or sooner. It's a slightly different world. I'm not sitting here saying you should adjust your goals downward. However, I'm suggesting you should probably revisit that GPS and make sure that it's in tune with where we are today.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I want to do right now is open it up for a couple of different things that you guys would like to discuss on our call that would make this the best possible mastermind that we have. So what are some things that you guys are seeing in your businesses that you would like to focus on, or for our leadership team, what are some things that you're seeing agents come to you with that you would like to focus on for us moving forward together? Just tap the mic to unmute yourself and tell us what you're thinking.
You know, Cassie and I, we run a property management company too. Yeah. And we're seeing a lot of leases before they even hit the market. I was actually on the street the other day about to show a lease property. People drove up a sign. We're looking at the sign. It's a sign call, actually. Looking at the sign, I waved them down and said, hey, do you want to come see it? So they went inside and saw the property. It wasn't what they were looking for. I had another one that hadn't hit the market yet. A couple blocks over, drove them over there. You know, no sign in the yard there. Bam. Probably 8 of the last 10 haven't been in MLS yet. Plus, we're seeing a lot of higher credit score applicants right now. Like one just came across today. The lady has almost an 800 credit score, and she's looking for a lease property rather than to buy. Those are the people we're going to put in our pipeline for a year from now to get them as buyers. But we're seeing a lot of leasing going on more than usual.
Why do you think that is?
I think they're scared. People are scared. They're a little frightened of what's going on. You know, job security, that type of thing. Money's tighter. So, you know, to put down payments, those types of things.
And likely they're getting fed from outside sources. And so obviously, in my opinion, our job is to come in and be that expert, that voice of reason, and that person with confidence to help them. So yeah, good job, Tim. That's
right.
Okay.
I'm muted. I think I've had several ask me, not necessarily buyers, just people in general, if the markets, you know, prices are going to drop. And I think some of them are waiting. Maybe that's why they're going to lease and think maybe prices are going to come down.
What do you think
just
about
a thought.
Did you say something, Scott?
Yeah, Mike, what do you think about that?
As far as you know, I don't know you guys' market. Obviously, I'm up in Colorado. However, you know, generally speaking, I think you're going to see, like, I think Adam Hergenrother and some others have come out and said, look, hey, we think we're going to see a little bit of a bubble or a spike come up with the pent up demand over the next 30 to 60. I'm not an economist. So I'm not going to predict what might happen after that. However, I think you're going to see some of that as each of these states roll back at different phases, their restrictions. To me, there's absolutely going to be some pent up listings that come on. We're already starting to see that up here in our market because we just got the showings allowed on the 27th of April. So we're starting to see a little bit more activity, though we're still putting things under contract through virtual means. We're just seeing an uptick of contracts fall apart, as you can imagine, because here in Colorado, they couldn't actually show the house until it actually got under contract. So I'm not sure where your regulations and restrictions are. But to answer that question about do I see prices going down? You know, I think listings are going to spike a little bit because we're hitting the summer months, and you had some pent up people that needed to make some moves. So who knows? How's that for an answer, Scott?
Well, you're right. We're not economists, and I do believe that there may be the potential for some of those things to decrease a little bit. I don't think we're going to see 2008, 2009 numbers. And the reason being is because our inventory has never caught up with where it was at that point in time. And if you go and look at it, the real thing that we've got to be doing is having the conversation with our clients on the front end about what their needs are and what term of investment they're looking to make. If they're looking to make a 5 to 7 year investment into their home and they're going to live there during that time, the reality of the situation is from the time that the market went down back in 2008 and 2009, it had recovered back to the majority of the price points that it was at within 4 years. So if they plan to live in their home for 5 to 7 years, it's really not going to be an issue for them based upon the past history of every single different market shift that we've seen over the last 50 years. Things have come back within 4 years. So if they plan on investing in their home and living in it, or holding it for 5 to 7 years, they're not gonna have an issue. And I believe it was Jim McKissick who said, "I've never lost money on a home I didn't sell." So if they're going to keep it for a while, that it's an investment that's going to hold.
Exactly. Yeah. That's sorry, Mike. Okay. I had read that as well, and that's kind of how I've been answering that question. I just wanted to see if anybody else had more brilliant ideas than I did.
Yeah, that's a great script, the appreciation. Like, know your numbers, right? Be the local economist of choice, like Gary says. Like, hey, for my city, appreciation has been X over the last 7 years. So let's apply that to today's scenario. Would you be willing to make X in 7 years based on the last 7 years of performance? Kind of what Scott was saying. And when they're like, oh, dang, if that trend holds true for the last 7 years and I can make $45,000, I don't pick a number, right, that supports it, you now become that expert in their eyes, and you just built a ton of confidence in them.
Yeah, and one of the things that has been interesting to see is, how Dallas came out with the really, really strict restrictions on showing property for Dallas County and Tarrant County and in Burleson and Johnson County have not been nearly as strict, and these are surrounding counties to Dallas. What I've seen happen is there's actually been a little bit of an uptick in people choosing to come to Tarrant County or to Johnson County because it's easier for them to go and see the property than it is in Dallas County right now. So for us, I would say that's yeah, Tim, exactly. Come on. For us, I would say it's kind of a blessing in disguise for us to be able to get in front of those people, because they do want to see it before they put an offer in on it or before they go under contract. And I know in Colorado, many of them couldn't even go and see the property until they were under contract on it until the middle of this last month. So
not until Monday as the showings are allowed. So
yeah. All right. So what other things that would you like to focus on?
Basically, Scott, I'm concerned about a lot of deals are, pardon me, they're being transacted, but they're falling apart because it's virtual. Like, I think it's contingent upon actually seeing the property. And number two, the appraisal is being delayed until after closing. What is that about? Is the closing contingent upon the appraisal going through?
I have not seen appraisals being delayed until after closing. What I have seen are drive-by appraisals where they don't actually view the home. They just do it from the exterior of the home, and they hope that they have all of the information they need based upon the MLS pictures of the interior of the home. I haven't heard of them delaying the appraisal until after closing, though. Is that something anyone else on here has heard?
I read that just in the National Association of Realtors. I mean, I don't know what market that was, but something I would look into to see if lenders are, some lenders are going that route. to just put off the appraisal because they can't get into the property physically, the appraiser. So I'm just thinking like maybe a lot of lawsuits, like, people buy it after they close and like, oh gosh, I didn't see this thing this crack in the wall, from the picture, from the virtual tour. So that's just kind of what I'm seeing, not to be negative, but just being real.
Yeah. Mike, what are you seeing around that?
We are seeing that in Colorado a little bit, a higher fallout rate. And some of that's a capacity of buyers losing jobs, of course, in this economy. It's certainly an aspect of sight unseen for sure. We're doing the best we can on virtual video. We're not even allowed to go in the houses, so we have to have our consumer shoot the video. If it's our listing, obviously we've done professional video and stuff like that in preparation for this. But if we have the buyer, we're kind of on the other, relying on the other agent's quality of effort to sell that house. So yeah, we're basically seeing a little bit higher fallout rate. I would say right now we're only seeing about 10% of contracts falling through. And we'll close about 12 to 15 on an average month. So we might see 1 to 2 fallout, each month. However, we're always on the back end of the cycle. So we're just now seeing some of that really take place because of the last 30 days of kind of stay-at-home orders. So
yeah, and it's really, really important for you to have a strong relationship with your lender right now. So if you're using Keller Mortgage, make sure you're reaching out and communicating with them frequently. If you're using your local lender, make sure you're reaching out and communicating with them frequently, because I know that many of these lenders, they're required now to do job verifications all the way up to the day of closing. To make sure that those people that are purchasing the home still have their job. And I've also heard, which just scares me to death a little bit, that there are other lenders out there who are lending based upon a letter that they get from the employer that says, when this is all over, you'll still have a job. Which is scary and kind of reminds me of some of the things that led to 2008 and 2009. Yet this is a different time and circumstances are different. And they're doing everything that they can to keep an industry moving forward. So it's completely, it's all new. Your relationship with your lender is very, very important. And if they pre-qualified or they were pre-approved a month ago and you're still in that housing process of looking for the house, we've got to make sure that they're still pre-qualified and pre-approved today, because lending guidelines are changing on a daily basis right now.
Yeah, and if I may say something real quick, that's exactly what I had in mind. It's not only the relationships, but also having a diverse set of lenders, just not one that you're always sending things to, because they're all going to have different parameters. And knowing them well enough that they can communicate with you without you having to communicate back with them. I think that's the difference between the realtors who can let those things go to the wayside, where if you're a professional, you're in constant contact with them all the time. And actually, a lot of the buyers that we have right now, believe it or not, are people who I've contacted them saying, hey, I know you're buying a house. Are you aware of this going on with your lenders? And they call their lenders, and then they call me back saying, oh my God, you were right. So, the next phone call I get is, I just dropped my realtor. Would you mind helping me? Because, you know what you're doing. So those relationships, not only with the lender, but I think all the way up and down your own network is extremely important at this point, because, we all need to be informed so we can inform our buyers and the sellers. So thank you.
Yeah. And this is why it's really important right now to be in front of our clients and consumers as frequently as possible, whether that's calling them, doing videos, as many touch points as you possibly can, because there's so much information out there that they believe to be factual that is a portion of the truth. Sounds like the news, right? Yet an example that I'll use is an article that came out on Yahoo News, I think it was last week, that said Chase is no longer going to lend to anyone who has less than 20% to put down. Okay, yes, and that's not the whole story, because there are government-backed mortgages like FHA who still are doing 3.5% down. Can you go and get a mortgage through Chase at 3.5% down? If you wanted to go through Chase, you could. But the story that a lot of people are going to get in their head right now, because national publications are putting it out there, they're going to believe, once again, that you have to have 20% down in order to purchase a home. So are we counteracting that story with the true reality of what the situation really, really is?
Kind of what Scott was saying is, it doesn't work so well with my background. Never mind. It's tactic 12, right? So tactic 12 is bulletproofing your transaction in the shift book. The more you know that process, the better you're systematized on your contract to close process. That's why we only see 10 to 15% fallout, because we're constantly in contact with everybody in the process to make sure everything's as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
On that note, on financing from the listing perspective, we vet our buyer's lending situation very thoroughly, and often you get the answer, the canned answer from the lenders that don't want to talk to you. It says, "Well, I'm not, allowed to discuss anything with you because you're not a, yada yada yada." And some of them will tell you everything from credit score to debt to income ratios and everything. So my question is, obviously we're dealing with clients that or buyers that potentially are borderline. And this is a question I'm asking right now is, where are we on credit score, debt to income ratios? Because those things are in flux, especially on the credit score, on what a lender will and won't do. Are they using, Home Possible or one of the bond programs or anything like that, which have, gone away with a lot of lenders? At what point or how much can we ask and push there before we cross
Cool.
legal line potentially on, obviously there's lines where, hey, I can't ask what, is this person, this nationality or that or whatnot, which I wouldn't do. But from the financing side, are there any lines that we can't cross in pressing to vet that financing? I know there's lines that the mortgage lender is not supposed to cross in answering the questions. I don't think there are, but I just wanted to see if there was any input on that and in how detailed we can get when we're vetting that buyer financing.
Mike, what is your process that you follow for your team in vetting buyers?
As far as the financing piece or the overall process?
The financing, yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's a pre-qualification. I personally say to our agents, they are not qualified to give financial advice because we don't know all the lending rules. We don't know, everything's changing daily. I know this is kind of a cop-out answer, but it's the truth. The truth is we rely heavily on the lender to be able to do the qualification process, right? I'm not an expert in that lender world, so sorry, that's not a great answer, yet that's the truth of the matter, is we just allow the lender to do his or her job and give that recommendation and advice.
Well, and when, especially on the buyer side, that's, we do that because we're connecting that buyer with a lender that we trust to do that job well.
You're talking about
on the listing side,
Gotcha.
We don't have control over that, who that buyer's using. And, everybody knows that, if you want something closed on time and, you get an offer and they're using USAA and they say they can close it in 3 weeks, it's not going to happen, so it's that kind of thing. So, for instance, when I call, every time I get an offer, I call the buyer's lender. What documentation do you have? Do you have their W-2s? Do you have their bank statements in writing? Do you have their tax returns? Are we dealing with W-2 income? Are we dealing with Schedule C's, self-employment income? Lenders, aren't supposed to tell us that information, but often they will. If they do, it gives me more information to say, okay, this lender has vetted this buyer thoroughly, and we know that we're not going to get to the underwriting. The underwriter says, hey, you can't use this income over here because it's X, Y, and Z. It's, they're straight W-2 salary. We know we're good there. But also, if you've got a buyer that's 620 credit score right now and they're doing X, Y, and Z, do you, and you've got multiple offers, which I'm still getting. I'm dealing with that this morning, as a matter of fact. So on the lower price points, just to provide the seller with some perspective as to which one is going to potentially be the less risky financing, just from a financial standpoint.
My belief on that is that we, as a listing agent, should ask as many questions as we possibly can and leave it up to the lender to decide what they're comfortable answering.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's gonna fall on the lender for answering the question. If they shouldn't have answered it, that's them.
Yeah. I didn't know if there was a line, because I'm probably going to be getting into a little bit more detail. I'm going to ask, what kind of work does the buyer do? Because if the buyer's a retail manager, I'm going to be a lot more skeptical if I got another offer over here from somebody that's a police officer. I mean, most likely to lose their job in the next 3 weeks.
I think you can absolutely do that as long as it's after the process has been let me think about how to say this. As long as you aren't violating any fair housing laws when choosing a person to purchase the home, and you're only verifying the criteria that is going to depend upon whether they qualify for the home or not, I think you're completely okay to do that. And I know every single person on this call is not going to violate any fair housing laws. I just want to clarify the way that I answer the question so that if anyone didn't like my response, I made sure that statement was in there. I would say your biggest resources right now are asking those questions directly to your lender. What line of work are they in? Are they guaranteed their employment? Ask as many detailed questions as you possibly can about it and about the process, because it's on the lender as to whether or not they're going to answer those questions. And right now, I think a lot of lenders are going to go ahead and answer those questions, some of the questions that they probably shouldn't even answer, because they're in this with us and they've got to get it to the finish line as well.
Well, and part of the reason one of the pieces of information I gather from those conversations as well is, if the lender's willing to answer more questions up front, I'm probably going to get better communication down the road when, do we have, because where Mike was saying, bulletproofing the transaction and staying with it, we're calling through the whole transaction. Has the appraisal been ordered? Yes. When's it due back? And then, a couple of days before that, we start calling, have you gotten the appraisal back? Are there any conditions? Is it in underwriting? When's it going in underwriting? Do you have everything you need for underwriting? These, multiple calls that are happening. When it comes back with conditional approval, what kind of conditions are we dealing with? Are we dealing with, oh my God conditions, or hey, we need an updated bank statement condition?
And I know every single person on this call informs their clients not to post everything on Facebook as they're going through the transaction. But not every other agent out there informs their clients not to do that. So Facebook can be your friend in vetting these things and checking them out to make sure that you are really where you're at with the transaction. So especially, I've seen people that I know personally have posted that they've hit difficult times and no longer have their jobs. So that can be another place. What's going on with them?
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that, but I guess the main question was that one about the employment. You know, are we crossing a line when we ask what kind of employment? So,
I would say go for it. Ask the question, and if they answer, great. If not,
okay.
Yeah, I'm with Scott on that. It's like the agent on the other side of the transaction. I'll ask as many questions as they'll answer, right? As long as I'm not breaching, fair housing and discrimination or anything like that. However, if that agent's willing to spill the beans, that's on them. Same with the lender. But
so why are they selling the house? What's the lowest price they take? You're not supposed to answer that, but sometimes they do.
I'm a little rebellious. So.
Everyone in this room better not be answering that question, okay? All right. What other questions do we have? Kim, I know that you had one earlier from our leadership call.
Yeah, I'm looking for creative ways of reaching out and touching somebody other than the typical care calls that we've already done and how are you doing? What are some creative ways of reaching out and making somebody smile and connecting with our agents and also with the agents we're trying to recruit?
I would say, is this more of a client base or an agent recruit leadership type answer?
Well, it's part of retention and recruiting, which have kind of intertwined during this time, because every company out there is calling us, and so we want our agents to know how much we love and appreciate them, and some creative ways that maybe we can reach out to them and help them with their business, other than or just help them with their life.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm thinking through that one. So because I'm looking at that from recruiting from a team and retention from a team versus market center kind of thing, and what kind of guidance I would say from like retention and recruiting from that. I mean, this is a big time right now where obviously you guys understand that is, it's about pulling everybody together, showing the love, the support, the family, the training, the education. Yet we're kind of seeing the other end of that peak right now, right? Everybody's zoomed out, everybody's virtual out, right? Those type of things. So coming up with that next creative thing that brings everybody together, I believe, is looking at futuristic type stuff. Like, hey, when we get out of this in 30 days, we're going to do X or we're going to do Y as a team, kind of that retention piece from now looking at the future and what does that next thing look like for the office, right? And I'm not saying major strategy changes, that's up to your leadership, but just things of events, how can you dangle that carrot for the next 30 or 60 days and celebrate once we're kind of out of this environment? Probably not a great answer.
Well, and on the other side of things, with your database, asking them questions about the future as well. And the reason it's important to ask future questions is because that takes them out of the now. And a lot of people are frozen in the I don't know what's next. Well, you can't think about what's next if you haven't been asked a question that takes you to the future. So for those people who are in your database who are small business owners, have you reached out to them and asked them a question like, hey, what does 6 months from now look like for you? Or what do you who's depending on you to be successful right now? What does it need to look like? If you had to change one thing in your business during this time to help you keep moving forward, what would it be? The question as our agents are the exact same questions we can be asking to our database, because every single person in our database is a leader in some way, shape, or form, and every single tactic that's taught in the shift book, we could actually break down into what that looks like in a personal household life. Have they reduced their expenses in their house tactic number 2, get real and get right with your expenses. Could we be having those conversations with our entire database? What would it look like for you to put a Zoom call together and teach one of these tactics? Or better yet, what would it look like for you to go and find somebody who's a Dave Ramsey financial peace person, bring them on, do a call or something like that for your database and say, hey, here are some things that you can be doing during this time to make sure that you're financially set. Or, hey, I know a lot of you probably received a stimulus check of some way, shape, or form. What's the best thing that you can do with that right now? For people who have small businesses, okay, here's how you can invest it. For people who are in some form of debt, okay, go ahead and take care of that debt right now, because that's $1,200 or $2,400 or $3,400, however many kids they have, that you can put toward taking care of that now. So finding things and being extremely creative about it is you've never had a better opportunity to get in front of your database and add more value than you do right this minute.
Even if it's something as simple as changing your mission statement and getting it out there, getting the word out there.
Yeah, what I've seen some successful agents do, and this would apply to recruiting too, right, is running those. Well, I'm not a financial planner. I've read the Profit First book by Mike Michalowicz, and I can do a Zoom call in the evenings for anybody that wants to get in and do that, right? And that's for business owners, that's for clients, that's for real estate agents. Somebody just took the old school of doing the first time home buyer seminar that we used to do in office or at a bank, and they did a Zoom, and they do it every week. And he picked up 3 pieces of business, had a lender on the phone with them. They pre-qualified those 3 people right there. $1.2 million in inventory in Tuscaloosa, Alabama is a pretty good 30-minute or 1-hour call effort, right? And so use the virtual means by all means, and just get creative around it. We do a lot. I have an agent right now on our team here that's doing 22 business to business videos over the next 2 to 3 weeks. She's getting massive exposure out there, and it's partnering with business owners. They love it. They feed off of it. She's already seeing some referral opportunities from that, right? Just get creative. And I think you can do that with agents through education and your consumer base as well.
Yeah, and you can be as creative as you want to right now. Last week, I saw an agent who brought her nail person on Zoom, and that her nail person was showing everyone how they can do their nails and make them look good at home. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I have some pretty intriguing friends on Facebook, and they've been posting pictures of how their nails have been growing out now, and you could see where the nail's supposed to be, it's all kind of crazy stuff like that. But for you to bring somebody like that on and them share tips on, okay, here's how you can take care of that at home. Or I don't know if you guys have seen the meme or not, but it says, when this is all over, you start seeing people back out on the street that you don't recognize, don't call the police. It's just your neighbors. You don't recognize them anymore. So you can bring a hairstylist on. You could bring all kinds of self-care type people on and interview them about, hey, what is it that you need to take care of right now, or how can people be taking care of themselves in a way that they're most of the time dependent upon you? And then that person, do you think people are going to be grateful for that person? Number one, absolutely. Do you think that on the other side of this, they're going to have more clients on the other end? Absolutely, because that's somebody who helped them and who helped individuals become more informed about the process that they actually take care of, and are able to show them what it truly looks like.
Yeah, so. And one other point, if I can make, is from a recruiting perspective, we take a lot for granted of the knowledge and the education that we've received as part of Keller Williams. I promise you, I have so many agents that have come over from other companies that they're reaching back out to those companies now and going, I'm amazed at what we are getting for information over here and the knowledge we're gaining. And they're reaching back to their colleagues, and their colleagues are like, a shift? What's that? I don't even know that we're in one, right? I mean, we take so much for granted that the knowledge that we have. We need to be out there exposing those other agents to the opportunities that we have. We're blessed to have as part of Keller Williams.
Yeah. All right. Any other topics that you wanted to bring up?
Oh, one script I wanted to throw out there for you real quick while we're waiting for the next question is we're seeing more of a movement from not just the hi, how are you to your database. It certainly still are that it's still there. Hey, how are you? How's your family doing? Now we're seeing Jason Abrams and others suggest the script to be not only hi, how are you? Do you have any questions about the market? Do you have any questions about the value of your home? Right? So we're still coming from care, yet we're now adding that next phrase in there. And I think that's what Scott was alluding to, was a little bit about the future kind of thing. So just know it's a simple script. Hey, do you have any questions about what's going on with the market? It's not salesy. It's a genuine question.
Yeah, and a lot of people have that question right now, especially if you yourselves are seeing buyers ask the question, well, is now the right time, or should I be waiting? For every one person who's asking you that question, how many aren't asking? Yeah, and Wes, you mentioned something in the chat box here. Would you mind sharing that with everyone?
About Dave Ramsey?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, you mentioned Dave Ramsey, so I was like, ooh. Yeah. That's one of my favorite subjects. Abby and I, my wife and I have, we took the class probably about 10 or 15 years ago, and for the first time, and we then took it again and again, and we went to a 6-hour seminar. And then since then, we've taught it probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. So we're actually teaching that in our market center. But I think what my brain's doing is thinking over, you know, because our plan was to go ahead and teach that again in June. But now I'm thinking, now that we've mastered the Zoom, that maybe we can put this out at, you know, as a virtual class as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
all right.
Wes, is that something that agents could invite their clients to as well?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would say every time that we've taught it, and this is not our first time to teach it in the Market Center, every time that we've taught it in the Market Center, we have, because that is posted on the Financial Peace University website, so anybody can click on that link and join, you know, that class. And so we'll have, you know, anywhere from 2 to 3 to 5 or 6 different attendees that are not real estate agents. So I always warn them, hey, you're surrounded by real estate agents, beware.
And would you charge for those Zoom calls? Like, I know we had to buy the book when we took it, or how would that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I said, I'm brainstorming here, so I'm going to look into that. I'll call Financial Peace and kind of see if, I'm betting that they have a plan. They probably have a virtual setup going, so I'll look into that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, anything else that you guys would like to cover today?
I've got
Arthur.
Yeah, I've got a question about how you feel the oil market going kind of upside down overnight here is going to play in the real estate market, considering that's somewhere where people shift and put their excess money. Real estate and energy futures are 2 places where people very often put money. And do you see any interplay here with those 2 markets?
Mike, you go ahead and give us your view on a national perspective, and then I'll give you my view on a Texas perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we do have quite a bit of oil and gas up here in northern Colorado specifically, so we see that impact. What I'm seeing right now is one, I do have an exec right now that does have a listing, a luxury inn listing here in Denver. And in his case, right, it's not so much your question, but he's being pretty aggressive on pricing and trying to move it a little bit because he's trying to get some of that recoup his financials. However, on the larger picture, I think it's that ebb and flow, right? You're still going to see investors probably move their money into real estate if they're not pulling it back and holding cash, right? I believe right now cash is king, and they're waiting for that right opportunity for prices to hit the right market for real estate, and then they'll invest it into real estate at that juncture. And Scott, you feel differently about that?
I I do agree with you. The places in Texas that I don't foresee this being a big issue in the major metropolitan areas in Texas. If we were talking early 90s in Houston, yes, it would have been an issue in the Houston area. However, the number one industry in Houston now is actually not oil. It's medical, and oil is actually the number 7 industry in the Houston metropolitan area. The places that I would be concerned about would be like the Midland Odessa area, because they're heavily relying on the oil industry, and they actually started seeing this start falling back in November, December, all the way through now. So the coronavirus didn't affect them as much as the oil wars between I think it was Russia and Saudi Arabia, going back and forth. That's what's really affected them, driving the oil prices down completely. We actually yesterday saw oil at a negative return, meaning they were producing more than we even had a need for. And the fact that nobody's really driving right now is not helping the oil industries. And with all that being said, I believe that the federal government is going to step in some way to take care of our oil industry. Rick Perry is the Secretary of Energy for the United States, and he was on doing an interview the other day where he talked about putting some kind of a moratorium on preventing oil from coming into the country from other places, and driving our oil prices back up a little bit to take care of these places in our country that are heavily dependent, like the Gulf Shores area, and then the West Texas area in northern Colorado. So I'm not too stressed about it, and economists have been talking about how this could happen for a while, and we're just kind of seeing it at the worst possible time for it to happen for those industries. Yet I think with all of the initiatives that the government's putting forward, I wouldn't be too stressed about it. And I definitely don't think we have anything to worry about in the Fort Worth, Johnson County area. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think on the, like I said, from the overall real estate economic picture, it won't have a significant impact on set resales or anything like that up here. However, specifically with investor or guys and gals, they might be holding back, in my opinion, to wait. Just typical investor strategy. So,
Mike, my final question for you today is this: if there was one thing you would want us to walk away with that we could implement into our businesses, what would it be?
I would say what I would look at is really focus in on where is your opportunity to take advantage of this outcome of coming out of COVID. That's very generic, yet I think it's a different answer for everybody. That's why it's not a here's your answer. My question is, where can you, if you're a team lead recruiting agent, where is that opportunity that you can take out of this, coming out of this environment? If you're a buyer, a seller, or a rainmaker, where's your opportunity, right? That's where it's, again, I apologize, I'm not being very specific to an action item, yet I see this as a massive opportunity. For us, it's about recruiting agents in Colorado. It's about how do we, those that were sitting on the sidelines for the last 30 days, I'm going to take massive market share, or our organization will. These are things that I see as like, what is my opportunity? That's an example of that.
Yeah, and Gary said on a call that he did with leadership last week, he said, you got to look at this as every time a market shifts, it's the opportunity for the redistribution of wealth. And the question you need to ask yourself is, how much of the wealth am I going to take advantage of receiving right now? So, whether that's the stock market, whether it's real estate, whatever it is, you have an opportunity to look at it from a different perspective right now. We all know that our airline industry is going to rebound because it is a necessity, just like a home is a necessity for people. So are you looking at those moves that you can make with the money that you have reserved for investments in some of these companies like Southwest Airlines or Delta that aren't going to go anywhere? They're just having a little bit of a difficulty right now. and thinking, okay, how can I make a smart investment right now that's going to pay off in the long run? And for these, we talked about this on a call that we were on the other day, but my biggest fear right now for our industry isn't anything that's happening as far as pricing goes. It's what consumers don't know. And the number one thing consumers don't know is what forbearance really is. Because this last weekend alone, we had another 250,000 people apply for forbearance. And those are numbers from Fannie Mae. So we're probably over 1 million people in our country right now who have applied for forbearance on their homes, which means that let's just say 25% of them really know what it means. So what does our industry look like 9 to 12 months from now? Are there foreclosures coming on at that process because people didn't know people didn't know what forbearance meant, and they could have made their payments, yet they put their money in other places because they thought it was just going to be added to the back of their loan. So I think that's the one thing that we've really, and I've harped on this a lot lately, get in front of your consumers, tell them what it is, tell them what they need to know about it, because this is your chance to love on them at the highest level by protecting their biggest investment.
So we're I appreciate sales and foreclosures a little bit right now, and starting to kind of put a plan B in for people that unfortunately didn't really execute. So that is an opportunity I think that's going to raise its head in 9 to 12 months. So that would be something I should alluded to, is something that, because again, most real estate agents, they wait to see success, and by the time they see other success, it's already on the downhill swing. I'm a big believer in pulling, ready, aim, fire, sometimes prematurely, yet I tend to be more successful and right if I'm kind of leading that effort. Does that make sense? So,
yeah. So do everything that you can to educate yourself. Looks like if you see a class online for health, take it. If you see classes online for foreclosures, take it. We're going to other experts into our market center to teach on these things, because something that I hope happen, I want you to take as much market share as you possibly can, because we all know that market share right now is never lose. Market share we lose right now is market back. Anyways, I appreciate you all for being here. Mike, thank you so much for hopping on and sharing your insight and perspective from around the country you coach, and we're just so grateful for you. So y'all have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.